Hello everyone. I got asked a question about cleaning a tank and substrate and all that technical stuff. So here we go. Um, when it comes to like cleaning your gravel and your substrate, that would depend on your setup and how many fish you've got and loads of random questions like that. But if we look at the two tanks that I have, this is actual gravel, okay? This is yard gravel, which has been washed a billion times, and it looks reasonable now. It's not dyeing the water. Now, if this water has a bit of a bluish tint in, apart from the lights, it's had chemical in, because some of the fish had the fish that I bought recently had the disease, so that's why they're in here. So for cleaning the tank, you'll normally have something a bit like this, or whatever yours looks like, basically a pump, tube, or you might just have a tube and do it the old-fashioned way when you suck the water out with your mouth. I would highly suggest you don't do that, but that's up to you. On the end you'll have either something like this or something like this, which is a bit finer, and this will disturb the gravel and just get the water and muck out. This will like pick the gravel up and lift it up. Now, as for when you make a mess, if you disturb the gravel, I'll show you, bear with 2 seconds. Now, with this tank, I'll just use my thing I've got here. If you look, this is a sponge filter, a big sponge filter. It's designed for a massive tank, so it cleans it quite quickly. If you look here, well, apart from the baby fish, if I disturb the gravel, you're going to get a mess. Yeah, obviously. Now, your filter will pull most of that in, and if you're doing a water change, you should aim to put the tube down at the bottom to get as much of that up as you can. Now, if you watch the muck, it will get pulled into the sponge. Well, it's actually going to the top, then it'll settle and go back round. It'll cycle round, but you will always get muck on the bottom. Now, depending on your tank, that might or might not be okay. In this tank, the snails, and there's a load of them, do all the cleaning work. Now, the bottom of the tank does have, well, it's got fish waste and snail waste, but that's what your filter's for. So every now and again, if you do a water change, and depending on which tank it is, I very rarely do water changes. This one gets more, obviously. You need to aim for the bottom. So if you bear with a second, I've got a bucket here, and I've took my shoes and socks off because every time I do a water change, I always get wet feet. I don't know why, but I always do. Now, if I put this in here, here's going to be a trick, isn't it? Okay. If you look, I'll try and aim this. There we go. So I put this one on just to show you. Okay, the water is obviously going in. So with this one, if you aim for the bottom, it should get most of the... Nothing will be 100%, okay? You're never going to get all the dirt out. So you disturb the tank like this, and you just spin it round, and you get as much as you can out. And as you can see, there you go. Now, I'll have to remember to saw that in a second. It's just floating around, that will settle, but you'll never get your tank 100% clean. Especially if it's just like chunky gravel like that. To be fair, it's going to look a bit messy. I've got plastic plants in here, So there's nothing wrong with plastic plants. And you'll notice that the snails are quite happily feeding on the plastic. Well, they're not. They're feeding on the algae that's growing on the side. And there's algae on everything, so don't worry about it. And there's also loads of little micro plants, and see the snails are just everywhere. This has a few floating plants in and one real plant at the back. That's an Anubis. What was I going to say? As for maintaining the tank, if you disturb the tank and it settles, like as you can see, that's settling down now. And as long as you don't like zoom in and go, oh look, it's got dirt on the rocks, your tank is fine. If it's filthy, you'll know, because, I mean, if you look there, it's settled now. If it's really bad, you'll be able to tell. If I get a glass, your water needs to be clear. Hang on. Right. If your water's hacky, then obviously, but if you look, so that's pretty clear. I mean, that's not the best test in the world, but there we go. It's going to settle after a while. If it takes a long time to clean up the muck that you've disturbed, and like it takes a long time to settle, maybe your filter isn't strong enough. Now, these type of filters don't really disturb the water that much. They don't cause a flow. They do on the surface, but not a constant flow. If you have what have we got here? One like this, a power head, they will have a big flow, which will cause a lot of disturbance. I was going to say a disturbance in the force. A disturbance in the tank that will take it for a long time to settle. It'll make it circulate around the tank. But as you can see, it's just floating, then it'll go up, then it'll go down. The fish themselves nibble and feed on whatever's on the bottom, if you can see the little baby there. And the snails are good for cleaning your tank, but if you notice, apart from it needs a clean on the outside, there's not that much algae on the front of on the inside of the tank. Now, what I do to clean the glass, okay, is just get no, it's not what you think it is. It's just water. Just blop it. It's my flat, so I can make a mess and go like this. Away from the PC. And then right, if you look at the glass now, you see there's no algae on the glass. This is a second-hand tank, so it's not perfect. And I've just put black paper on the back. It's got marks on the back, but you notice there's no algae on the glass. That's because the snails have done their job. You don't need millions of little snails. You can get some really nice big snails. Let me just empty this out a second, and then we'll have a look at the other tank, because the other tank's a bit different in that I don't do water changes in this one, but I'll do a bit of a difference. I need to put water back in the other one. Okay, with this tank, it's not got gravel in. It's got substrate. Oh, we're being posh now. Okay, in here, it's quite thick layer of substrate. It's got little black ball type substrate, which is, have I got any? Yeah, here. It's fluval plant substrate, and that's like a black brown colour. And what that does is it puts nutrients into the gravel for your real plants to eat, and also to release the nitrates and things. Then it's got normal little fine gravel. Now in this tank, you've got the snails that clean the glass. You've got these fish here that are sucking on the glass as well. They're called otocinclids. Glass cleaners. There's different types, but these aren't cheap. So depending on how much money you've got, depends on what you could do to clean your tank. Snails are nothing, because they're normally pests, but I don't mind them. You can get nice big round snails called nearite snails and mystery snails. They're actually quite nice, and they do the same job, but they're bigger, so you don't get as many in your tank. In here you've got plastic plants, these green ones, real plants, the Amazon swords, an anubis, and some floating plants. I've got the glass cleaners we saw. These are Aspidoras. They're a relative to the more common Corydoras. And what they do, as you can see, is they go around the bottom and they nibble on all the bits of waste and dead food that have gone, all the food that goes to the bottom. And the fish do the same, depending on the shape of their mouths. If they're top feeders, bottom feeders, or middle feeders. So the bottom feeders only eat off the bottom, or on like rocks and things, as you can see. There's some coolie loaches in, which I showed in another video. But right, so this tank doesn't get water changed that much because I don't like disturbing it, because of its being a, I've set it up as more of a natural biome and the fish aren't dying, so why bother? But if you've got, depending on who told you what to do, and I am no expert, do as you're told, or what you feel your fish need. If you need to do a water change, my dad does a water change every week or something. It's like, what? The last time this had a water change was several months ago. But if you look at the bottom, see all the fluval black nitrate stuff, but also all the dirt. And when the fish disturb it, like they're doing there, it goes up and settles down. But we'll do something different in this tank. If you look at this tank, hang on, let me, 2 seconds, there we go. Put this in here again. This is why I need another pair of hands. Okay, put this one in here. If I disturb this tank now, fish aren't going to be happy with me, but right, this makes a lot of mess. Look at that. Okay, now let me just pull that out a second. Right, normally you would aim to suck all that out from the bottom of the tank, but if you've got substrate that's like the fluval stuff, which has all that bacteria and the good bacteria and stuff for your plants, that's going to come up black and dirty anyway. It's because of it dissolving. But as you can see with the dirt there and the bacteria, if you look, as soon as I do that, all the fish, can you see the fish? I don't know if you can. It's not a, it's my phone camera there. They'll come in to investigate because I've disturbed it. But it settles really quickly. Now it looks a mess when you first do it, but when you're finished, it'll just settle down like that. This is slightly darker area of the tank because I've made like a dark area and a lighter area. As I said, so with this one, I'll do it with this and you'll see. Okay, this now, what you should do with this, you see, and look at that, that's, looks very dirty, doesn't it? But remember, this is a mature tank, and there's a lot of waste, but the waste is like absorbed by the plant, otherwise you wouldn't get such a big plant, because they need food like you would in the garden. And there's also that fluval soil, which is basically a soil for the plant, which causes it to make a mess. But if you look, it's starting to settle again really quickly because there's no actual big flow pushing it around and making a mess. And this is just one of those big sponge filters which the snails love. They're even down in the oxygen pipe, but never mind. And they like to cling. So as I said, if it's taking a while to settle, I need to top these again with water in a minute, then you might need a better pump. You might need a bigger filter, sorry. Like if you've got one of those power head filters, you know, like canister type, or if you've got an external one, there might be a settings to adjust, or it might be too powerful and it's pushing the muck around. But it will take time to settle. I mean, that's taking its time to settle, but it's not taking that long. But I've deliberately left that like that because of, one, the type of gravel and soil, as I said, it's that fluval, wherever I put it. Yeah, there, the fluval. And two, because I've got the coolie loaches that like to swim through stuff, which is in the other video, and the other bottom feeders, they'll quite happily go through that. And if this tank was bad, the fish would die. And the fish aren't dying. So that, by the way, is a spawning mop. It's basically wool, made into like the old-fashioned dollies. You know, like where you wind, like you, I don't say wind your bob. You know, when you wind it around your hands, tie it, and then cut it in half. That's what that is. But you can find out about them easy enough. And fish like to lay eggs and things in there, or snails like to climb in them. But I've got plastic plants and real plants, so don't worry about plastic plants. And you'll get algae growing on them, which change the colour a little bit. And your fish eat algae, and there's no algae on the glass here, and I don't do anything to this tank. Because of the snails, the other fish. I mean, the snails are quite happily eating away at the bacteria. I need to cut a few of these leaves down because they're getting a bit big. But so this probably, people would say this is a dirty tank, but it's not. I mean, the fish are alive, but the water started to settle now. If you look, it's all settled to the bottom. But yeah, if it's taken a long time to settle, then you might need to look at your pump. You might need to clean the sponge, because how often do you clean the sponge in the pump? And as for to keep the bottom clean, while the Aspidoras are different, they're small and expensive. Well, they are compared to Corydoras. Get yourselves a fish called a Corydoras, which is a really popular fish. And I'll have a look in my fish book here. Here we go. You need to get yourselves a little cheap book like this, just with pictures in with the fish, so it gives you an idea of what you're looking for. These fish here, Corydoras, doesn't have to be the bronze one, it can be this albino, it can be the expensive ones, it can be, basically, these are bottom feeders. They like to swim in groups, and what they do is just disturb the gravel on the bottom and get rid of all like food particles that doesn't get eaten by everybody else. And these are normally not that expensive, depending on which ones you get. Obviously, there are really expensive ones and cheaper normal ones, like the bronze cories and things. And they do a similar job to these. If you look, the fish have gone back to see what I've been doing. And they'll do a bottom feeder. They'll eat the food on the bottom. So when you clean the gravel, there's only going to be like a little bit of the fish waste, and all the food gets dropped to the bottom. These things will eat it, but I would suggest you don't get one. Because they're a community fish, that you can't really get one because they'll be sad and lonely. You need like 3 or 4 of them. So if they're a bit out of your price range, then don't bother. Don't get one. You know what I mean? You need a few. If not, just leave it. And if you haven't got a lot of money, but you've got lots of algae on the tank, you don't actually need a magnet. Just go to the kitchen, get a clean one, but get a cheap sponge, get a fresh one, obviously, and just put your hand in and wipe the glass on the inside. But I don't do anything with that tank. Oh, there's me tub of bits and bobs. Don't ask. And as for lighting as well, this is an expensive night crew. And this one with all the plants in is a cheap as chips night crew light, and they're just like flat. I can't really show you, but this is a really, really cheap light. And that's an expensive one, like a lot more than that. And it's got different settings, it's got a remote control. But yeah, I'm not sure if that'll help, but to keep the bottom of your tank, I'm thinking about putting some cories in here actually. They'll look nice and they'll help maintain this tank. Because the snails are alright, but you know, not everybody. My dad always wants to kill the things. He's like, snails! We don't like snails! And everyone goes to him, help you keep your tank clean. But you don't have to have these annoying little ones. You can get some really nice snails, nearite snails and mystery snails. Just be careful. You don't, And if you've got loads of snails, to be fair, one, you've got a lot of dirt in your tank, but two, they'll do the job, they'll clean it up. I mean, if you look at the white at the back there, the snails are quite happily nibbling on all the waste. Obviously, they're not going to do it in 5 seconds, but they will, just do their job. Anyway, I hope that helps. If not, just ask me a question, and if I don't know an answer, I'll find you one. Alright, bye.